On January 18th, something rare and deliberate unfolded in the unseen realm, and it did not happen by accident. From the first light of dawn, Archangel Michael hath been stationed near your entrance, not as a symbol, not as a distant idea, but as an active guardian assigned to a precise moment in your life. This is not about coincidence or imagination. This is about timing. Entrances are never random in the spiritual order. An entrance is where permission is granted, where authority is exercised, where transitions occur. And when heaven assigns a warrior to stand watch at an entrance, it signals that a threshold is being crossed, whether you are aware of it yet or not. January 18th marks a line in the sand. Something that was waiting, restrained, or held back has now been authorized to surface. There is a reason this message is pressing on you now. The atmosphere around your life has shifted quietly, always subtly, but with great intention. From dawn, before distractions, before voices, before the noise of the world, Michael was positioned. Dawn is when spiritual decisions are finalized. It is when the outcome of unseen battles is sealed before human logic catches up. This is why the message carries urgency. A family matter is surfacing right now, not later, not eventually. It is rising because the time of delay has expired. What was once postponed for mercy, for growth, for readiness, can no longer remain hidden. Heaven is not exposing this to harm you. Heaven is revealing it to protect you. You may have felt a strange restlessness recently, an unexplainable pull toward thoughts of family, past conversations, unresolved tensions, or long-standing silence. These are not random emotional waves. They are indicators. When a matter involves family, it often involves roots, patterns that run deep, agreements made long ago, words spoken or withheld that shaped more than one life. And when Archangel Michael is assigned, it means this matter carries weight. He is not dispatched for minor disturbances. He stands where justice, protection, and truth must converge. His presence declares that what surfaces now will not be allowed to spiral into chaos. It will be contained, confronted, and ordered. The phrase "open before time locks it" is not poetic language. It is a warning wrapped in mercy. There are spiritual windows that open briefly, and once they close, the same opportunity does not return in the same form. This does not mean loss is inevitable. It means ease is conditional. Opening now brings clarity with grace. Delaying invites resistance. Time locking happens when heaven honors human hesitation. When signals are ignored, heaven does not force. It withdraws, and the process becomes harder than it needed to be. This is why you are being told now. Awareness is your advantage. Understand this clearly. Nothing is approaching your household without permission. Michael's stationing near your entrance is proof of that. He stands not only to guard but to regulate what comes in and what is removed. Some family matters surface explosively. This one is surfacing deliberately. It may arrive as a conversation, a realization, a sudden truth, or even a confrontation that cannot be postponed. Whatever form it takes, it carries the potential to realign more than just one relationship. It touches the atmosphere of your home, the emotional inheritance of your family line, and the peace that has been contested quietly for too long. You were not meant to be caught off guard by this. Heaven does not expose without first preparing. This message is preparation. It is a signal that you are not standing alone at this threshold. While emotions may rise, protection is already in place. While truth may feel uncomfortable, order is already assigned. Michael's presence means no accusation will go unchecked, no manipulation will go unchallenged, and no false narrative will prevail. What comes to light now does so under supervision. Pay attention to the word entrance. This is not only a physical doorway. It represents access points, who and what has influence, what has permission to speak, what has been allowed to linger. Family matters often involve blurred boundaries. January 18th marks a correction point. Something is being repositioned, and you are being invited to respond consciously rather than react emotionally. This is where maturity meets obedience. Opening does not mean writing. It means acknowledging, addressing, and allowing truth to do its quiet work. There is a reason this message found you and not someone else. It is because you are positioned at the center of this matter, even if you did not ask to be. You are the one capable of handling it without destroying what needs to be preserved. Heaven trusts you more than you realize. And that trust is why a warrior stands watch rather than chaos being released unchecked. This is not a threat. It is an assurance. As you listen, let the urgency settle without fear. Urgency does not always mean danger. Sometimes it means opportunity. An opportunity to resolve what has lingered. An opportunity to protect what matters. An opportunity to step into a role you were always meant to occupy within your family. January 18th is not about panic. It is about precision. And what you do with this awareness will determine how smoothly the next phase unfolds. What you must understand now is who Archangel Michael is and why his presence changes everything about this moment. Michael is not a messenger who simply delivers information and leaves. He is a watchman, a commander, an enforcer of divine order. When he is stationed, it means heaven is not waiting to see what happens. Heaven is prepared to intervene if necessary. His assignment near your entrance signals that what is unfolding is under strict authority. Nothing will escalate beyond what is permitted, and nothing that threatens your household will be allowed to cross unchecked. This alone should bring a sense of grounded calm, even as serious matters begin to surface. A watchman at the door means something is about to move either in or out. In ancient understanding, watchmen were placed at gates during times of transition, war, judgment, restoration, or protection. Michael's role is especially clear in moments where spiritual conflict intersects with human decision. He does not stand idle. His presence means lines are being drawn, truth is being defended, and justice is being guarded so that what unfolds does not spiral into harm. This family matter you are facing is not emerging in chaos because Michael's assignment prevents chaos from taking the lead. Many people misunderstand protection. They assume protection means nothing difficult will happen. In reality, divine protection often means difficult things are handled correctly. When Michael stands guard, it means the outcome is safeguarded, even if the process feels uncomfortable. He ensures that lies lose their power, that intimidation fails, and that emotional manipulation cannot dominate the situation. His presence creates a boundary the enemy cannot cross. That is why this moment feels intense but not overwhelming. There is pressure, but there is also restraint. This is important because family matters are rarely simple. They carry history, emotion, memory, and sometimes unspoken pain. Left unattended, these things grow in the shadows. But when heaven decides it is time, the exposure is measured. Michael's watch ensures that what is revealed does not destroy what still has purpose. He separates what must be confronted from what must be preserved. This is not about tearing families apart. It is about restoring order where disorder has been quietly tolerated. You may notice that conversations feel unavoidable now. Topics that were once easy to dismiss keep resurfacing. There is a sense that something must be addressed, even if you do not yet have all the words. This is not pressure from people. This is alignment from above. Michael's assignment often coincides with moments when avoidance is no longer an option. Not because you are being punished, but because you are ready. Readiness does not mean comfort. It means capacity. You have the capacity now to face what you could not before. There is also a warning embedded in this protection. When a watchman stands guard, it means access is being monitored. Who you allow into this process matters. Whose voice you listen to matters. Not everyone deserves a seat in this moment. Some people will speak from emotion, others from fear, and some from self-interest. Michael's presence urges discernment. Listen for clarity, not noise. Choose counsel that brings peace, not agitation. Protection is not only about blocking attacks, it is about guiding decisions. This is where your participation becomes vital. Heaven has taken its position, but your agreement completes the circuit. Agreement does not mean understanding everything at once. It means acknowledging that this moment matters. It means not dismissing the stirring in your spirit. When you acknowledge what heaven is highlighting, you align yourself with the protection already in place. Resistance does not cancel the process. It only makes it heavier. Alignment allows it to move with precision. If this message is resonating with you, do not treat it casually. Engagement is more than a platform action. It is a declaration of alignment. When you like this message, when you share it, when you comment and subscribe, you are not just supporting a channel. You are signaling agreement with truth being revealed. These small actions carry weight in moments like this. They anchor intention. They mark awareness. And they help ensure that messages like this continue reaching those who are standing at similar thresholds without clarity. Michael's stationing is temporary, but its impact is lasting. Watchmen are not placed permanently unless a gate is under constant threat. His presence now indicates a decisive season. Once the matter is addressed, his assignment will shift. This is why timing matters. Delays do not cancel protection, but they can prolong tension. Heaven prefers resolution over repetition, and you are being given the opportunity to resolve rather than relive. As this part of the message settles, take note of what rises within you. Names, memories, situations. Do not judge them yet. Simply observe. Awareness is the first step of alignment. The fact that you are hearing this now means you are already closer to resolution than you think. The watchman is at the door. The gate is under protection. And what comes next will not catch you unprepared. This family matter is not emerging suddenly. It has been rising slowly from silence, building pressure beneath the surface long before this moment. Silence does not mean absence. It often means postponement. There were opportunities in the past when this issue could have been addressed gently, but timing, fear, loyalty, or uncertainty caused it to be set aside. What is surfacing now is not new. It is simply no longer willing to remain hidden. January 18th marks the point where silence lost its authority. The reason it is surfacing now is because the conditions that once required restraint no longer exist. Growth has occurred. Strength hath been formed. And heaven has judged that you can now face what once would have been too heavy. Family matters carry a unique weight because they are tied to identity. They shape how we see ourselves, how we respond to conflict, and how we define loyalty and love. This is why unresolved family issues rarely disappear. They go dormant. They wait. And when they rise, they do so with emotion attached. You may notice old feelings resurfacing unexpectedly: sadness, frustration, confusion, or even guilt. These emotions are not signs of weakness. They are signals pointing to a root that needs attention. What has been buried is asking to be acknowledged, not to punish you, but to be released from its hold. There is also a generational element to this matter. Family issues rarely belong to just one person. They echo through patterns, repeated behaviors, and unspoken rules that shape everyone involved. What you are facing now may have been carried by others before you, handled imperfectly, or avoided entirely. The difference is that you are now standing at a moment where repetition can stop. This is why the timing feels intense. Heaven often chooses one person in a family line to confront what others could not. That role is not assigned lightly. It is given to the one who can bring closure without destruction. You may be tempted to minimize what is coming up, to tell yourself it is not worth the emotional effort. But minimization is one of the last defenses of unresolved pain. This matter is surfacing because it holds influence over your present and future. Left untouched, it would continue shaping decisions quietly, influencing relationships indirectly. Addressed now, it loses its power to dictate outcomes. Exposure, when guided, is not about shame. It is about freedom. Notice how this revelation does not arrive alone. Protection is already in place. Awareness has been granted before confrontation occurs. This is intentional. You are being given time to process internally before responding externally. Wisdom often speaks first in private. Pay attention to what feels highlighted rather than overwhelming. What stands out repeatedly is usually the doorway to resolution. You do not need to solve everything at once. You only need to acknowledge what is real. There is also a mercy in the timing. Had this surfaced earlier, it might have caused fracture rather than healing. And now, the potential for understanding is greater. Emotional maturity has grown. Perspective has widened. This does not guarantee ease, but it does increase the likelihood of peace. Heaven does not rush revelation without preparing the heart to carry it. The fact that you are hearing this now means preparation has already occurred, even if you did not recognize it at the time. As this family matter rises, resist the urge to assign blame immediately. Blame closes doors that understanding needs open. This does not mean excusing harm or ignoring truth. It means allowing clarity to emerge before judgment hardens. Michael's presence ensures truth will be defended, but truth works best when it is allowed to speak fully. Give yourself permission to feel without reacting prematurely. Stillness at this stage is strength, not avoidance. What happens next depends not on the size of the issue, but on your willingness to face it honestly. This is where many people turn back, not because they are incapable, but because familiarity feels safer than change. Yet you were not brought this far to retreat into old patterns. The discomfort you feel now is temporary. The freedom that follows is lasting. Hold on. What comes next changes everything, and you will be glad you stayed for what is about to be revealed. Type "I receive clarity" in the comments if this resonates with you. Lesson code 314 is now activated. As I speak this, I feel the weight of this moment, and I am compelled to invite you into something sacred. When you support this mission, you are not funding a channel. You are sowing light into homes where silence has ruled for too long. The word declares, "I send my word and heal them," and today God is sending that word through this very message. I am speaking directly to you because your obedience in this moment can become a river that reaches souls you may never meet. This is a prophetic act, not a donation, an urgent response to heaven's call to open doors before they lock. If the Spirit stirs you, activate super thanks. Join this mission through membership or give through PayPal. The links are in the description, and the PayPal QR code is appearing now. I bless your seed as oil that will never run dry, and I command increase over every giver who moves in faith right now. There is a reason this family matter did not surface at night, in chaos, or in emotional exhaustion, but at dawn. Dawn is not merely a time of day, it is a spiritual condition. Dawn represents transition, clarity, and the quiet authority of new beginnings. It is the moment when darkness loses its grip without being violently removed. Light does not argue with night. It simply appears, and night recedes. This is why what is unfolding in your life is happening now, in this manner. Heaven chose dawn because this revelation was never meant to overwhelm you. It was meant to awaken you. Dawn is when watchmen complete their shift and report what has passed unseen. In the spiritual order, dawn is when outcomes are sealed. Decisions made at dawn carry weight because they are made before distraction enters, before emotions are stirred by external voices. This family matter is surfacing in a season where you are more aware than you realize. You may not feel fully ready, but readiness is not measured by confidence. It is measured by clarity. And clarity is exactly what dawn brings. Think about how dawn feels. There is still quiet, but it is no longer heavy. There is still stillness, but it no longer feels stagnant. That is the atmosphere surrounding this moment in your life. The heaviness that once surrounded this family issue has lifted just enough for you to see it without being crushed by it. This is intentional. Heaven waited until fear loosened its hold, until emotional fog thinned, until you could observe rather than react. That is why this revelation did not come during a crisis. It came during a shift. Dawn also signifies mercy. In ancient understanding, judgment executed at dawn was considered measured and just. It allowed time for reflection before action. What is happening now is not a sudden exposure meant to shock or shame. It is a controlled unveiling. You are being given space to think, to pray, to discern. This space is part of the protection you were promised. Many people confuse urgency with panic, but divine urgency is calm. It is steady. It moves with purpose, not pressure. You may notice that this matter is presenting itself quietly. There may not be dramatic confrontations yet. Instead, there are realizations. The thoughts connect to. Memories aligning. This is dawn work. This is the mind and spirit being synchronized before external movement begins. Heaven always works inward before outward. The fact that things are becoming clear internally means the foundation is being laid for external resolution. There is also something else about dawn. It reveals what was already there. Dawn does not create new objects. It makes existing ones visible. This family matter did not appear because something new went wrong. It appeared because light has increased. Increased light always reveals what darkness once concealed. This is not a sign that things are getting worse. It is a sign that things are becoming honest. Honesty is the doorway to peace. If this had surfaced earlier, when emotional maturity was lower or wounds were fresher, it could have caused division rather than healing. Dawn timing prevents that. Dawn softens sharp edges. It allows truth to be spoken without unnecessary force. This does not mean everyone involved will respond perfectly, but it does mean the opportunity for understanding is greater now than it ever was before. Timing is not just about events. It is about capacity. Notice also how this message arrived without force. You were not chased by it. You encountered it. That is another sign of dawn timing. When heaven forces, it often meets resistance. When heaven invites, it meets willingness. You are being invited into awareness, not dragged into confrontation. This invitation respects your free will while still honoring divine order. It gives you dignity in the process. Dawn moments often feel subtle, and because of that, they are easy to dismiss. Many people miss their most important shifts because they are waiting for dramatic signs. But heaven rarely uses spectacle when alignment is the goal. Instead, it uses clarity, a sense of knowing, a quiet conviction that something must be addressed now. That is what you are experiencing. Do not ignore it simply because it arrived peacefully. This is also why patience is required in this stage. Dawn is not new. Full visibility has not arrived yet, and it does not need to. You are not being asked to act impulsively. You are being asked to observe faithfully, to let understanding settle, to allow wisdom to take shape before words are spoken or decisions are made. Rushing at dawn can create confusion. Waiting too long can miss the moment. Balance is key. Everything about this timing points to intention. Heaven did not choose this moment randomly. It chose it because resistance is lower, clarity is higher, and protection is active. The family matter surfacing now is surrounded by restraint, not chaos. That restraint is what allows healing to be possible. Without it, truth could wound instead of restore. As you move forward from this part of the message, carry this understanding with you. Dawn is a gift. It is the evidence that what is happening is meant to lead somewhere better. You are not losing anything of value. You are gaining sight. And sight, once gained, changes everything that follows. Every doorway represents authority, and every entrance carries permission. This is why the symbolism of the doorway is so central to what is happening now in your life. A doorway is not just a passage, it is a decision point. It determines what is allowed to enter, what is allowed to remain, and what must be turned away. Spiritually speaking, doors do not open themselves. They respond to consent. And what is unfolding now is a test of discernment, not of strength. You are not being asked to fight. You are being asked to decide. This family matter is standing at the threshold because thresholds demand clarity. For too long, blurred boundaries may have existed, emotional access without accountability, influence without responsibility, silence mistaken for peace. Doors left partially open create confusion. They allow things to drift in and out without order. Heaven is addressing this now because confusion has outlived its usefulness. What once required tolerance now requires definition. This is not about rejection. It is about alignment. You may feel torn between compassion and firmness, between loyalty and truth. This tension is common when doorway decisions involve family. Love often convinces itself that leaving doors open indefinitely is kindness. In reality, unguarded doors exhaust the soul. They drain emotional energy, create recurring cycles, and prevent healing from fully settling. This moment is inviting you to redefine what access looks like, not from bitterness, but from wisdom. A doorway test does not ask whether you care. It asks whether you are willing to care wisely. Wisdom knows when to open, when to pause, and when to close without guilt. You are not responsible for how others respond to boundaries. You are responsible for maintaining order within your own sphere. Heaven honors boundaries because boundaries protect purpose. Without them, even good intentions become distorted. This is where hesitation often appears. Hesitation sounds reasonable. It whispers that now is not the right time, that more clarity is needed, that waiting might make things easier. But hesitation at a doorway is rarely neutral. It usually favors the status quo. And the status quo is what allowed this issue to linger unresolved. Delay feels safe because it avoids discomfort, but it also postpones peace. The test here is not whether you can endure discomfort, but whether you trust that resolution is worth it. Notice how this moment does not demand dramatic action. It demands honest acknowledgement. Sometimes opening a door means initiating a conversation. Other times it means allowing truth to surface without interruption. and sometimes it means closing a door that no longer serves the health of the household. Closing is not cruel when it is done with clarity. It is protective, and protection is an act of love. Fear often disguises itself as caution at doorways. It warns of potential fallout, strained relationships, or emotional backlash. These concerns are not imaginary, but they are not authoritative either. Fear predicts outcomes based on past patterns. Wisdom discerns outcomes based on present alignment. This is why this moment feels different. You are not the same person you were when this issue first emerged. Growth has changed your capacity. Awareness has sharpened your discernment. You are better equipped now to handle what once felt overwhelming. Another aspect of the doorway test is recognizing what you are no longer meant to carry. Family roles can become burdens when they are assumed without consent. You may have been the mediator, the peacekeeper, the one who absorbs tension so others do not have to face it. That role may have served a purpose once, but it is not sustainable forever. Doorway moments often mark the end of unhealthy assignments. You are allowed to step out of roles that were never meant to define you permanently. Opening the right door also means closing the wrong expectations. You are not required to meet demands that compromise your peace. You are not obligated to maintain silence to preserve appearances. True peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of order. Order requires honesty, and honesty requires courage. The courage being asked of you now is not loud or aggressive. It is quiet and steady. It says this matters enough to be addressed. You not underestimate the power of a single decision made with clarity. Doorway decisions ripple outward. They influence dynamics, reset expectations, and often bring relief even when resistance appears initially. Many people fear that setting boundaries will destroy relationships. In reality, unclear boundaries are what erode them over time. Clarity may cause discomfort, but it also creates the possibility for genuine connection rather than forced harmony. This test is also about self-respect. How you manage this doorway communicates to yourself what you believe you deserve. Peace is not selfish. It is foundational. When you protect your peace, you protect your ability to love without resentment. This is not about winning or losing. It is about choosing health over habit. As you stand at this doorway, remember that hesitation keeps doors ajar, allowing unresolved issues to drift back in repeatedly. Decisiveness, guided by wisdom, brings closure. Closure does not always mean endings. Sometimes it means new beginnings under new terms. Either way, it restores balance. You are not being rushed, but you are being prompted. The test is gentle but firm. Will you open the door to truth, or will you allow time to lock the moment behind you? What you choose now shapes not only the situation, but how future thresholds are approached. This is not just about one family matter. It is about learning how to stand at entrances with confidence, clarity, and peace. There is a reason the image of a sword is so closely associated with Archangel Michael, especially in moments like this. The sword is not a weapon of chaos. It is an instrument of precision. It does not swing wildly. It cuts deliberately, separating what must be removed from what must remain. Over your household, this sword is not raised in threat but in authority. It represents a decisive act of order being enforced where confusion once lingered. This is not about punishment. It is about clarity being restored. When Michael's sword is present over a household, it signals that something is being severed at the root. Not surface behaviors, not temporary reactions, but underlying influences that have quietly shaped patterns for years. These influences may include unspoken agreements, inherited expectations, emotional debts, or roles that were never formally assigned but slowly assumed. The sword does not attack people, it addresses structures. It cuts through false obligations and distorted responsibilities that have burdened relationships without ever being named. This is why the process may feel intense internally, even if nothing dramatic has happened externally yet. Internal intensity often precedes external peace. The sword works first in the unseen, dismantling what cannot coexist with truth. You may feel a sudden inability to tolerate things you once ignored. Conversations that once felt manageable now feel heavy. This is not regression. It is discernment sharpening. When clarity increases, tolerance for disorder decreases. That shift is a sign that the sword is already at work. The sword also represents protection. It stands between what threatens and what is being preserved. In family matters, this is critical. Without protection, truth can wound instead of heal. Michael's assignment ensures that exposure does not turn into destruction. He restrains escalation. He limits damage. He prevents cycles of accusation and retaliation from taking control. This is why, even as difficult truths surface, there is a sense that things are not spiraling out of control. Order is being enforced quietly, but firmly. Another important aspect of the sword is finality. When something is cut, it cannot be reattached in the same way. This does not mean relationships must end, but it does mean certain patterns will not return once this process is complete. Old dynamics that relied on silence, guilt, or emotional leverage will lose their effectiveness. The sword ensures that once clarity is achieved, regression is unlikely. This is a mercy, even if it feels uncomfortable now. You may notice resistance rising, either within yourself or from others connected to this family matter. Resistance is a natural response when long-standing patterns are challenged. What has benefited from disorder often resists order. But resistance does not indicate failure. It confirms impact. The sword exposes where attachment still exists. Pay attention to what triggers defensiveness or fear. Those reactions often point to what is being cut away. It is important to understand that the sword does not remove responsibility. It removes distortion. Accountability remains, but it becomes clearer and fairer. Where blame once floated without direction, responsibility will now be defined. This is essential for healing. Healing cannot occur where accountability is absent. At the same time, the sword prevents responsibility from becoming condemnation. It draws a line between owning actions and carrying shame. Shame has no place in restoration. The presence of the sword also brings peace, though not immediately. Peace follows order, not the other way around. Many people seek peace by avoiding confrontation, but avoidance only delays resolution. True peace settles in after truth has been acknowledged and boundaries have been established. This is the peace Michael's sword protects. It is not fragile. It does not depend on everyone's approval. It rests on alignment. You may be tempted to rush the process, wanting immediate relief from the tension. Resist that urge. Cutting too quickly without understanding can create unnecessary wounds. The sword moves at the pace of wisdom, not impatience. Allow insight to mature. Let conversations unfold with intention rather than impulse. Precision requires patience. And patience here is not passive, it is attentive. There is also a generational dimension to this cutting. When certain patterns are severed, they do not continue down the family line. What you are facing now has implications beyond the present moment. Children, future relationships, and even extended family dynamics are affected by the decisions made in this season. A sword ensures that what is unhealthy does not get passed on unchecked. This is one of the quiet ways restoration works, by stopping damage before it multiplies. As this part of the process unfolds, trust the restraint you sense. Even when emotions run high, there is a limit being enforced. That limit is protection. You are not expected to manage everything alone. The sword stands as assurance that the weight of this moment is not entirely on your shoulders. Authority had been assigned. Order is being restored. In time, you will look back and recognize this moment not as a season of loss, but as a turning point. What was cut away made room for stability. What was clarified brought relief. And what was protected allowed peace to take root. The sword over your household is not a sign of conflict. It is a sign that conflict will not have the final word. There is a serious weight behind the phrase time locking, and it is important to understand what it truly means before this moment passes. Time locking is not punishment. It is consequence. It occurs when a window of grace, clarity, or ease closes because it was not acted upon. Heaven does not remove opportunities out of frustration. It withdraws them out of respect for free will. When a moment is ignored repeatedly, the conditions surrounding it change. The opportunity may return later, but it will not return with the same support, the same simplicity, or the same level of protection. This is why the urgency you feel now is calm but persistent. It is not panic-driven. It is purpose-driven. Time locking happens quietly. There is rarely an announcement. One day, what felt accessible suddenly feels heavy. Conversations that could have brought resolution now feel tense. Paths that once seemed clear now require more effort. This is not because heaven has abandoned you. It is because the ease attached to the earlier window has expired. In the context of this family matter, time locking would mean that what can be addressed with clarity now would later require crisis to resolve. Small conversations turn into major confrontations. Gentle boundaries turn into rigid walls. What could have been healed through understanding becomes something that demands endurance. Heaven prefers restoration through willingness, not survival through strain. That is why this warning is being given now, before resistance sets in more deeply. You may recognize this pattern from past experiences. There were moments when you felt prompted to speak, to act, or to address something, and hesitation won. At the time, nothing seemed to go wrong. Life continued. But later, the same issue returned with greater intensity. That is time locking in action. The delay did not eliminate the problem. It allowed it to gain complexity. This is not meant to shame you. It is meant to inform you so that you do not repeat the cycle. Time locking also affects emotional capacity. The longer something is left unresolved, the more emotional energy it consumes in the background. It drains focus, patience, and peace without drawing attention to itself. By the time it resurfaces forcefully, exhaustion has already set in. Addressing this family matter now preserves your emotional reserves. It prevents future burnout. It protects your ability to respond with grace rather than resentment. Another aspect of time locking is relational distance. When issues linger too long, people adapt by creating emotional space. They avoid topics, reduce vulnerability, or disengage subtly. These adjustments feel like coping mechanisms, but they slowly erode connection. What could have been repaired through honest dialogue becomes normalized distance. The longer that distance exists, the harder it is to bridge. Acting now prevents that drift from becoming permanent. Heaven's timing is not arbitrary. When a window opens, it is because multiple factors have aligned: your growth, the readiness of others involved, and the presence of protection. Ignoring that alignment does not undo it. It simply means the alignment will shift elsewhere. Future resolution may still be possible, but it will require more effort because the surrounding support will have changed. This is why awareness is being emphasized. Knowing what is at stake empowers you to choose wisely. Time locking also affects perception. When a matter is addressed promptly, it is seen in context. When it is delayed, it is often viewed through the lens of accumulated frustration. Words that could have been understood earlier may later be misinterpreted. Intentions may be questioned. Acting now allows truth to be received with less distortion. It preserves the possibility of mutual understanding. It is important to note that urgency does not mean impulsiveness. Acting within the window does not require rushing or forcing outcomes. It requires intentional movement, acknowledging the issue, initiating the conversation, or setting the boundary that has been avoided. Even small steps count when taken at the right time. Heaven honors movement more than perfection. There may be a part of you that hopes this moment will pass on its own, that the intensity will fade and the issue will resolve without direct involvement. That hope is understandable, but it is not aligned with what is unfolding now. The presence of protection, clarity, and prompting indicates that avoidance would not bring peace, only postponement. Peace comes from resolution, not from waiting for circumstances to change on their own. This warning is not meant to frighten you. It is meant to empower you. Knowing that time locking is possible gives you the ability to prevent it. You are being trusted with this knowledge because you are capable of acting on it. Heaven does not issue warnings without also providing the means to respond effectively. As you move forward, remember this. Acting now does not guarantee immediate comfort, but it does secure long-term stability. Delaying may feel easier in the moment, but it compounds difficulty later. This moment is a crossroads. One path leads to resolution with support. The other leads to resolution through endurance. Both lead forward, but only one preserves peace along the way. You are not being pressured. You are being invited to choose ease over struggle, clarity over confusion, and alignment over avoidance. The window is open now. What you do with it determines how the next season unfolds. Right now, heaven is not pushing, it is waiting. This is one of the most misunderstood spiritual moments, because waiting from heaven does not mean inactivity. It means readiness. Everything that needed to be positioned has already been positioned. Protection is in place. Insight hath been released. Timing has aligned. What remains is response. Heaven pauses at moments like this not out of hesitation, but out of respect. Your response matters because it determines how the next phase unfolds. Many people assume that divine intervention overrides human choice. In reality, divine movement often pauses at the edge of human will. Heaven moves in partnership, not domination. That is why this moment feels suspended, almost like a breath being held. It is not emptiness, it is anticipation. What you choose now gives direction to everything that has already been prepared. You may feel an inner nudge that is gentle but persistent. It does not shout. It does not accuse. It simply returns again and again to the same point. That is alignment calling for agreement. Agreement does not require certainty. It requires honesty. You do not need to know exactly how things will resolve. You only need to acknowledge that something must be addressed. That acknowledgement is often enough to release the next step. This pause is also merciful. It allows you to respond from clarity rather than pressure. Heaven could force exposure, but forced exposure rarely heals. Voluntary response opens the door to cooperation. Cooperation invites grace. This is why the atmosphere around this moment feels restrained rather than explosive. You are being given the dignity of a choice. Response does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it is an internal decision to stop avoiding the truth. Sometimes it is a quiet prayer asking for wisdom before speaking. Sometimes it is the courage to initiate a conversation that has been postponed too long. These actions may seem small, but in moments like this, small movements carry significant weight. Heaven measures obedience by direction, not by size. There is also something important to understand about timing here. Waiting too long does not freeze the moment. It changes it. The longer response is delayed, the more likely emotion will replace clarity. This is not a threat, it is a pattern. Emotions grow louder when truth is ignored. Responding now keeps the process anchored in awareness rather than reaction. You may wonder what happens once you respond. The answer is movement. Once agreement is given, heaven advances. Redaction shifts from station to active. Conversations gain structure. Confusion begins to thin. You may not see immediate results, but you will feel a shift internally. That internal shift is the sign that alignment has occurred. This is also where peace begins to enter, even before resolution is complete. Peace does not always come after problems are solved. Sometimes it arrives the moment you stop running from what needs to be faced. That peace is not denial. It is assurance. Assurance that you are not alone in the process. Assurance that what unfolds next will be guided, not chaotic. Be mindful of distractions during this stage. Distractions are subtle here. They are not dramatic interruptions. They are excuses that sound reasonable. Fatigue. Busyness. Waiting for a better time. These are not inherently wrong, but they can become tools of delay if allowed to dominate. Discernment means recognizing when delay is wisdom and when it is avoidance. The clarity you feel now is your indicator. Heaven's waiting is not indefinite. It is patient, but it is purposeful. This moment will pass into the next phase, with or without your conscious participation. Conscious participation brings cooperation. Unconscious drift brings resistance. The invitation here is to step forward intentionally rather than be carried forward reluctantly. As you listen to this, notice what stirs in you. Not fear, but recognition. That recognition is the confirmation that this message is for you. You are not overhearing someone else's moment. You are standing in your own. And what you do next matters more than you realize. You will be glad you stayed for what comes next, because what is about to be revealed shifts everything you thought this situation would cost you. Type "I step forward" in the comments if this aligns with you. Blessing code 842 is now activated. I need to speak to you from the depth of this moment. When heaven waits for a response, it is because souls are on the line, and your obedience becomes a bridge for others. Scripture declares, "Those who sow in tears will reap with joy," and God is speaking that promise alive over this very mission. I am inviting you personally to partner with this work, because your seed becomes light entering homes that feel stuck in silence just like this. This is not about giving later. It is about responding now, before the moment passes. Activate Super Thanks, step into membership, or give through PayPal using the link in the description or the QR code on your screen. I speak blessing over your obedience, and I declare that what you release now will return to you pressed down, shaken together, and overflowing. Alignment is not an abstract idea. It is a practical shift that produces real protection. When you align with what heaven is highlighting, you step into a different level of covering. This is where many people misunderstand spiritual protection. Protection is not passive. It is activated through agreement. The moment you choose to face what needs to be addressed, rather than avoid it, you move under an authority that changes outcomes. Alignment turns vulnerability into strength, not because the situation becomes easy, but because it becomes ordered. When alignment occurs, confusion loses its leverage. You may have noticed that before this moment, your thoughts around this family matter felt scattered. You went back and forth, questioning yourself, doubting your instincts, replaying scenarios without resolution. That mental unrest is often a sign of misalignment, not wrongdoing but delay. Once you decide to move in truth, even if you do not have all the answers yet, that unrest begins to settle. Clarity does not come from knowing everything. It comes from choosing the right direction. Protection activated through alignment shows up in subtle ways. Conversations stay calmer than expected. Words come out clearer than rehearsed. The actions are restrained rather than explosive. This is not coincidence. It is evidence that order has been restored. Michael's assignment shifts from guarding the threshold to reinforcing the path forward. Once alignment is established, you are no longer standing at the door, you are moving through it. His alignment also restores authority within the household. Authority does not mean control, it means stability. When unresolved family matters linger, authority becomes fragmented. Everyone reacts instead of responds. Once alignment is chosen, roles begin to clarify. You stop carrying what is not yours. You stop absorbing emotions that do not belong to you. That alone creates a noticeable change in the atmosphere. Peace does not have to be announced. It is felt. It is important to recognize that alignment does not require agreement from everyone involved. This is where many people get stuck. They wait for others to be ready before they move. But alignment begins internally. When you align yourself with truth, protection follows you, regardless of how others respond initially. Over time, that protection influences the environment. Resistance loses momentum when it meets consistency instead of reactivity. You may notice that once you align, certain conversations no longer trigger you the way they used to. That is a sign that emotional hooks are being removed. Hooks only work when there is something to latch onto. Alignment removes that axis. This does not mean you become indifferent. It means you become grounded. Grounded people are harder to destabilize, and that stability is protective not only for you, but for everyone around you. Alignment also brings discernment about next steps. You may suddenly know when to speak and when to remain silent, when to engage and when to step back. This discernment is not guesswork, it is guidance. Protection is not only about blocking harm, it is about directing movement. When you are aligned, you are less likely to say something you will regret or avoid something that needs to be addressed. Timing improves. Tone improves. Outcomes improve. This is also the stage where sharing matters. When you engage with this message, when you like it, share it, comment, and subscribe, you are not just supporting content. You are reinforcing alignment. These actions may seem small, but they serve as declarations. They mark your willingness to stand with truth rather than hide from it. And they help ensure that messages like this continue reaching others who are standing at similar thresholds without clarity or protection. Alignment often brings an unexpected sense of relief. Even before full resolution, there is a feeling that something heavy has been lifted. That relief is not imaginary. It is the release of internal resistance. Resistance consumes energy. Alignment restores it. You may find yourself sleeping better, thinking more clearly, or feeling less tense around family interactions. These are early signs that protection is active. Do not be surprised if others begin to adjust their behavior once you align. Sometimes alignment exposes a balance. People who benefited from blurred boundaries may feel unsettled. That discomfort is not your responsibility to manage. Stay consistent. Protection works best when you do not over-explain or over-defend your choices. Let clarity speak for itself. This part of the journey requires patience. Alignment does not force immediate change in others, but it does initiate inevitable change in the dynamic. Over time, truth stabilizes what chaos once controlled. You are not responsible for speeding that process up. You are responsible for staying aligned as it unfolds. Hold on. What comes next reveals why the resistance you faced was never about weakness, but about timing, and why that timing is now shifting in your favor. What you are beginning to see now is that the resistance you faced along the way was never proof that you were doing something wrong. It was evidence that timing was involved. Resistance often intensifies just before a shift, not because you are weak, but because something is losing its grip. When old patterns sense they are about to expire, they push back. They rely on intimidation, distraction, and exhaustion to maintain control. But resistance has a shelf life, and that shelf life is ending. For a long time, it may have felt like every attempt to bring clarity into this family matter was met with delay. Conversations stalled. Emotions flared unexpectedly. Progress felt temporary. This was not accidental. The enemy rarely confronts directly when delay is more effective. Delay keeps people tired. It keeps issues unresolved without appearing urgent. It convinces you that nothing will ever really change. But delay only works until timing shifts. And timing has shifted now. There is something important to understand about deadlines in the unseen realm. Just as heaven operates with appointed times, resistance does too. There are limits to how long confusion can dominate before it is overridden by order. Those limits are not determined by human endurance alone. They are set by divine authority. What you are experiencing now is the end of a permitted season of resistance. A season served its purpose. It exposed what needed to be addressed. It revealed patterns that could no longer be ignored. And now, it is ending. You may notice that the same tactics that once discouraged you no longer have the same effect. What once caused anxiety now feels familiar, even predictable. This is not because the situation has become easier, but because you have become clearer. Clarity weakens resistance. When you recognize patterns for what they are, they lose their ability to surprise you. Surprise is one of resistance's greatest tools. Once removed, its influence diminishes rapidly. Another sign that resistance is ending is the increase in options. Where you once felt trapped between extremes, either confront everything at once or avoid it entirely, you now see middle paths. Thoughtful conversations, measured boundaries, strategic pauses. These options were always possible, but resistance clouded your ability to see them. With that fog lifting, choice returns. Choice is power. This shift also explains why things may feel exposed all at once. When resistance collapses, it often releases what it was holding back. Information surfaces. Truth becomes harder to deny. Silence loses its cover. This can feel overwhelming at first, but it is actually a sign of progress. What was hidden is now visible. What was controlled is now accessible. Visibility creates accountability, and accountability accelerates resolution. It is important not to confuse this exposure with escalation. Escalation is chaotic. Exposure is clarifying. Escalation multiplies conflict. Exposure narrows it. What you are seeing now may feel intense, but it is focused. That focus allows you to address the core issue rather than fighting endless symptoms. This is how lasting change occurs. You may also notice that your own responses are changing. Where you once felt the need to explain yourself repeatedly, You now feel comfortable stating your position once and allowing it to stand. Where you once absorbed emotional pressure, you now recognize when to disengage without guilt. These shifts are subtle, but they are significant. They indicate that authority is returning to its proper place. Resistance often relies on the belief that you must earn peace by enduring discomfort indefinitely. That belief is false. Peace is not a reward for suffering. It is a result of alignment. As alignment strengthens, resistance weakens. This is why the timing matters so much. You are not facing resistance at your weakest point. You are facing it at your clearest. There may still be moments where old fears attempt to resurface, reminding you of past failures or unresolved attempts. Do not be discouraged by these moments. They are echoes, not warnings. Echoes fade when they are not reinforced. Each time you respond differently, calmly, clearly, without overreaction, you weaken the echo further. Consistency accelerates this process. This is also where trust becomes essential. Trust not in perfect outcomes, but in the process itself. You do not need to control every response or predict every consequence. You need to remain steady. Steadiness frustrates resistance because it cannot provoke a reaction. Without reaction, resistance loses momentum. Eventually, it disengages entirely. As this phase continues, you may begin to feel a quiet confidence replacing old anxiety. This confidence is not arrogance. It is grounded assurance. It comes from knowing that you are no longer avoiding what needs to be faced. You are participating consciously. That participation shifts the balance of power. The ending of resistance does not always look dramatic. Often, it looks like normalcy returning. Conversations become less charged. Tension dissipates. You find yourself thinking less about the issue because it no longer dominates your emotional landscape. These are signs that control has been broken. This part of the journey is about recognizing that the hardest part is behind you. What remains requires patience, not fear. The deadline that once worked against you is now working for you. And as resistance fades, space opens for restoration to take its place. What begins to unfold after resistance fades is something deeper than resolution. It is reordering. This is the stage where a new order settles over your family line, often quietly, without announcement. Reordering does not always change who people are, but it changes how influence flows, how roles are defined, and how peace is maintained. This is where healing moves beyond the immediate issue and begins touching past and future at the same time. Family lines carry momentum. Patterns, habits, and unspoken expectations move forward until something interrupts them. What you are part of now is that interruption. Not through rebellion, but through awareness. Awareness disrupts repetition. When you see clearly, you stop moving on autopilot. And when one person steps out of autopilot, the entire system begins to adjust. This is how change becomes generational rather than temporary. You may start to notice subtle shifts. Conversations that once felt tense now feel neutral. Certain topics lose their emotional charge. Old triggers do not provoke the same reactions. These changes may seem small, but they are evidence that the internal structure has changed. When structure changes, behavior follows naturally. You do not have to force it. You simply have to maintain clarity. This new order also brings correction without cruelty. Where correction once felt like rejection, it now feels like alignment. People begin to understand boundaries not as threats but as definitions. Definitions reduce confusion. Confusion is exhausting. Clarity brings relief, even when it challenges long-held assumptions. Over time, that relief becomes stability. Another sign of reordering is the restoration of proper responsibility. You may realize that you were carrying weight that never belonged to you. Emotional burdens, expectations, or roles assumed out of necessity rather than calling. As the family system recalibrates, those burdens begin to redistribute. Not everyone will welcome this immediately, but balance does not require universal comfort. It requires truth. This stage often brings a sense of calm authority. Not dominance, not control, but presence. You no longer feel the need to manage outcomes or monitor reactions. You trust the boundaries you have set. That trust communicates confidence, and confidence invites respect. Respect stabilizes relationships. Stability allows healing to deepen. Reordering also affects how future conflicts will be handled. What once escalated quickly may now be addressed earlier, with less emotion. What once required intervention may now resolve through conversation. This is how progress compounds. Each healthy response reinforces the new structure, making it easier to maintain over time. It is important to understand that this new order does not erase history. It reframes it. Past mistakes no longer define present dynamics. Lessons replace labels. Growth replaces guilt. This reframing allows relationships to move forward without denying what happened. Denial freezes growth. Acknowledgement frees it. You may also notice that your own sense of identity within the family is changing. You are no longer defined solely by what you provide, fix, or absorb. You are recognized for who you are, not just what you do. This recognition may come externally or internally first. Both matter. Internal recognition often leads external change. The stage can feel quiet compared to earlier intensity. That quiet is not emptiness. It is settling. Think of it like water after a storm. The surface becomes still, but clarity increases. You can see deeper. You can sense what belongs and what does not. That discernment protects the new order from slipping back into old patterns. There may still be moments of adjustment. Old habits do not disappear overnight, but they no longer dominate. When they appear, they are easier to address because the foundation has changed. You are no longer negotiating from instability. You are standing on clarity. One of the most meaningful outcomes of this reordering is its impact on those who come after you. Children, younger relatives, or even peers observe how conflict is handled, how boundaries are respected, how peace is preserved. They learn without being taught. This is how generational healing spreads, through lived example, not instruction. Do not underestimate the significance of this moment. What you navigated was not just a personal challenge, it was a pivot point. The courage to face what surfaced allowed a new pattern to take hold. The pattern will influence decisions, relationships, and emotional health long after this specific issue fades into memory. As this part of the journey unfolds, remain attentive but not anxious. Reordering stabilizes itself when reinforced by consistency. You do not need to revisit old arguments to prove progress. Let behavior speak. Let peace demonstrate its own value. This is not the end of the story. It is the establishment of a healthier chapter. One where truth is not feared, boundaries are respected, and relationships are no longer maintained at the cost of inner peace. The new order settling over your family line is not fragile. It is grounded. And it exists because you chose awareness when silence was easier. What remains now is to carry this stability forward, trusting that what has been realigned will continue to hold, because it is no longer built on avoidance, but on clarity. As this message comes to its close, it is important to look back and see the full picture of what has unfolded. What began as an urgent revelation became a guided process. You were not rushed, exposed, or abandoned. You were led. Step by step, clarity replaced confusion, order replaced tension, and stability replaced fear. This was never about a single moment or a single conversation. It was about a shift in how truth is handled in your life and within your family line. You were shown why timing mattered, why protection was present, and why hesitation carried weight. You were guided through awareness, decision, alignment, resistance, and reordering. Each stage had a purpose. Nothing was wasted. Even the discomfort served to sharpen discernment and strengthen resolve. What you faced did not break you. It positioned you. And that positioning is what ensures peace moving forward. There is assurance here that must not be overlooked. You are not leaving this season exposed. What has been addressed is now covered by clarity. What has been clarified is now stabilized by boundaries. And what has been stabilized is now protected by consistency. The fear that once whispered, "What if this goes wrong?" is being replaced by quieter truth. This is finally in order. That truth brings rest. You may still encounter moments of reflection, where you think back on what was said or what was revealed. Let those moments be reminders of growth, not invitations to revisit old pain. Reflection is healthy when it produces gratitude rather than regret. You did what was required of you in this season. You responded when it mattered. That response carries lasting effect. The presence that stood watch at the beginning of this message does not leave you unguarded now. Protection does not disappear when a matter is resolved. It transitions. It becomes embedded in the new structure that has been established. Peace becomes the guard. Clarity becomes the filter. Discernment becomes the watchman. You carry forward what was once stationed externally. This is also a moment of encouragement. You are more capable than you realized. The process you walked through proves that what once felt intimidating no longer holds the same power over you. That confidence is not loud or boastful. It is steady. It allows you to move forward without constantly looking back. Forward movement does not require forgetting the past. It requires learning from it and not living inside it. As you step into what comes next, carry assurance with you. Family dynamics may continue to evolve, but they will no longer do so unchecked. You have learned how to recognize early signs of imbalance. You know the cost of silence and the value of timely clarity. These lessons are now part of you. They will serve you well in every relational space you enter. This closing is not an ending, it is a sealing. What was opened has been addressed. What was at risk of locking hath been resolved in time. And what could have caused prolonged strain has instead become a source of strength. This is how restoration often works, quietly, thoroughly, and with lasting impact. Let peace settle where tension once lived. Let confidence replace doubt. Let gratitude rise for the protection you did not have to fight for alone. And as you move forward, trust that the order established here will hold, because it was built on truth rather than avoidance. Type "I walk in peace" in the comments if this message aligned with your spirit. Lesson code 915 is now activated. As we close this moment, I need to speak to you with clarity and authority. What you have just received is living seed, and seed must be sown to multiply. God is using this message to reach families standing at the same threshold you just crossed, and your obedience can become the vessel He uses. I am speaking to you directly. This is your moment to act, not later, not someday. When you give through Super Thanks, step into membership, or sow through PayPal using the link in the description or the QR code on the screen, you are releasing light into households that desperately need order and peace. This is a prophetic response, not a transaction. I declare that as you give, God establishes stability, increase, and favor over your home, just as He has done here. Move now, and let your obedience speak louder than words.